to Churchill. We are live, coming to you from the shores of the Hudson Bay. You can even hear our radios in the background because we are on a Tundra buggy. Now we're going to turn that radio down because we want you to be able to hear us. But most importantly, we want to share with you about Polar Bears International and their work that they're doing up here to help inform and educate folks, and you guys, you the students, about what polar bears do. So we're going to have a whole lot of fun today as we go through this Tundra Connection. Just so that you're aware, our audience, of course, our classrooms all across North America and really around the world, and our partner is the Discovery Educator Network. Now, we hope that you're able to ask us questions as we go throughout the program, and you can do that a couple ways. You can do that in the chat window on the page, the Tundra Connections page that you're watching. You can also do that by emailing questions@pbears.org. questions@pbears.org. Or else, if you're on Twitter, you can use the hashtag Tundra Connections and we'll see your tweets. And of course, we'd love to see you in your class as you're viewing this Tundra Connection. Before we see our panel, take a look out there. Do you see that? That is a live polar bear in the brush. He is rolling around on his back, and this is rare because this time of year the bears are not that active. Usually they're laying around and they're waiting for the sea ice to form. Look at that. Oh my goodness, he's having a good time, guys. Kind of scratching his back. I think he looked at all the students. Students, that was him. Maybe he heard you in your classrooms. This is awesome. So we're going to talk all about bears today, and more importantly, maybe not more importantly, but and additionally, what could polar bears hear when they're out here on the tundra? And there's so much to hear, and so many other animals that occur and live out here in this ecosystem. So, to get things started, to my left, Dr. Tom Smith, can you please say hello and tell the students a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I really want to keep watching that bear, but
I think we all do.
Yeah, so, well, it's really nice to make your acquaintance. I come from Utah, of all places. I teach at Brigham Young University. I'm a professor there. I also have been privileged to be able to study bears in Alaska, and I'm here now because there's a lot of bears, and we're going to talk about those, so it's great to be here.
Yeah, that bear, he's for some reason, he's just hanging out. We love this. This is not every day, I tell you. Yeah. This is probably the one of the best shots we've had of one all day. So we're glad you can join us. To my right, Dr. Stapleton.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Seth Stapleton, and I'm from the University of Minnesota. So I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. Most of my research has been conducted a little bit to the north of here in a place called Fox Basin and Baffin Bay, but it's a privilege to be here with you today, and we're looking forward to sharing some of our experiences and some more information about polar bears over the next few minutes.
And now that image that they just saw of you, that's kind of like what we're on right now, that Tundra buggy.
That's right.
And so just so you know, students, of course, it's a little dangerous to be on the ground, so we don't want to be on the ground. We don't want to interact with the bears, so we're in a Tundra buggy just like that vehicle there, so we're up high and we can watch this bear from a safe distance.
That's right.
So, Jodi, can you please say hello to everyone and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jodi Rhymer. I'm a PhD student, which just means I've been in school for a really long time. And I'm just getting started.
I think you meant to say, you've been in school for a really long time.
I do, yeah. I mean, I have the best job in the world, so I'm really excited to be here. It's my first time on a Tundra buggy, and it's a lot of fun, as you can see, just watching these bears and getting to see them do their funny things.
Thank you so much. So if we can start and share with the students, why are the bears here? Why is that guy that's been hanging out our window, why is he just kind of hanging around and rolling around in the brush? Tom, could you help us a little?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. As a wildlife biologist, part of our work is to understand why animals are where they are, because as we try to help them and conserve them and avoid causing troubles for them, we need to know what habitats are most important for them. So in the case here, polar bears are not here by chance. They're here because this is such a unique part of the world in that ice forms earliest right here in this part of Canada and on Hudson Bay, such that the bears know that, which if you sit back and think about it, that's pretty amazing, that of all the places here in northern Canada, these bears know to be right here on Polar Bear Point because they know it's some of the earliest ice that's going to form. As such, why do they want the ice? Well, not because they like to eat ice, it's because they walk out on it, and when seals, which comprise a large percent of their diet, come out, that's where they can catch them. So polar bears need ice to capture their prey and to feed, and so that's why they're here.
Great, thank you so much. And Seth, can you share a little bit about this habitat? Because I know you've spent a lot of work in the subarctic and even the Arctic. What's so special about this area?
Well, this is a really special area because bears don't spend, in this part of the world, they don't spend all year out on the sea ice. There's portions of this area, Hudson Bay, as well as to the north, Fox Basin, where the ice melts annually, and that's a natural part of the cycle. And when the ice melts, well, the bears aren't going to stay swimming in the water all summer, so they come to land here, and they really just wait for the ice to freeze up. So that's a normal part of the process, and it makes for a fantastic opportunity to come and see bears while they're waiting for that ice to reform.
Thank you. This guy is so cute. I'm loving this today. Getting a great view, and we wish you could be with us, but here in person. But just so that you know, we came to the town of Churchill, Manitoba, just on the western shores of the Hudson Bay, and that's where we're joining you from virtually. And so what we've done while we're out here is we've been really trying to observe and see what else this place has to offer. And you can see right now we zoomed in on where Churchill is, and so there's a lot of water, right? There's a whole lot of water. And as we have been spending a couple days here, we thought it might be fun to reference one of my favorite books as a young child, which was Polar Bear, What Do You Hear? And you're probably familiar with this book. If you're not, of course, we'd encourage you to read it with your teacher maybe later, or read it on your own this evening. So we have our own version of Polar Bear, the book. But this version we're calling Polar Bear, What Can You Hear? And the whole goal here is we're going to share some images and the sounds that these animals make. And what we want you to do in your classroom is to go ahead and take a guess. So we're going to be quiet, and we're going to line up our first one, which is going to be an Arctic fox. And when I say so, we're going to share that, and there it is. And I'm going to be quiet so that you can listen to it. Do you think you know what it is? I gave you a big hint. A real big hint. If you were listening closely, are you guessing in your classrooms? Remember, you can always share what you think it is. Your teachers could go ahead and type to us in that live chat window, or of course using the hashtag Tundra Connections on Twitter, or even email your answers to questions@pbears.org. And so we're looking for what you think it is. And we had a few guesses out there, but I did say it. Are you ready? Yep, I did say it. That was an Arctic fox. So maybe one more time before we go on. Can we hear that? And then Seth's going to share a little bit about the Arctic fox.
Okay, everybody, so that was indeed an Arctic fox, and that was actually an Arctic fox pup or kit that was calling to his parents. And one of the really interesting things about Arctic foxes are that they follow around polar bears, and they're sort of the scavengers of the Arctic. So if you like to raid the refrigerator after a tasty meal and get into those leftovers, that's exactly what an Arctic fox does too.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, so we have another one, okay? You're going to join our game. You've seen how this goes. We've got a few animals for you today. What we want you to do is guess to us, what animal do you think this is, okay? We're going to play it. We're going to stay quiet so you can hear the call, hear the sound that it makes, and you go ahead and guess, and of course reach out to us on Twitter or in the chat window. Okay, we are looking to, let's see, lots of guesses coming in now. Oh, we also have questions. And by the way, nice job. I know Miss Page's grade 2 class was chiming in. We also had other folks that got the last one. So, do you think you know what it is? You got your answers out there? Jodi, can you tell us what those were?
Those were beluga whales.
Yes,
Did you guys
they
get it
were.
right?
Beluga whale. So we'll listen to it one more time, and then Jodi's going to share a little bit of information about a beluga whale. So Barnard Academy, by the way, got that one right. I just wanted you to know that. These guys they're on it. They know their animals. Tell us a little bit about the beluga whale.
Good work, guys. I'm impressed. Well, the first time I heard the word beluga whale was when I was probably your age in that song Baby Beluga. Do you know it? Seth wants me to sing it.
I do.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead. They might want you to sing it. Feel free.
You might know it. You can sing along. Baby beluga in the deep blue sea, swim so wild and just swim so free. That's as far as I'm going.
That's great. I loved it.
Anyway.
Let's give him a round of applause. That was a great job. Nice work.
So maybe you know that song, and now you know what animal you're singing about. And belugas are pretty cool because they are kind of like us in that they like to hang out with their friends. So you guys probably like to hang out with your friends during recess, and these guys are the same. And they hang out in big groups with their friends called pods. Another fun thing, I don't know if you guys have nicknames for your friends. I do. We have some nicknames amongst the group over here. But belugas also have nicknames, and they're called the canary of the sea. And so you just heard them singing around underwater. And you know, canaries are those little birds with a really pretty song. So these are kind of like the songbirds, but underwater instead of flying around.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. So, again, if you're just joining us, we're going through animals of the Arctic and the subarctic. And so, if a polar bear was really paying close attention, what might, in fact, that polar bear out that window behind us, that's a polar bear live right behind our tundra buggy. What might that polar bear hear as he roams and wanders throughout his habitat? So, our next one we're going to play for you, and again, we encourage you, submit your guess. What animal do you think this is? We'll go ahead and play this one.
Ooh. 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 Ooh.
We gave you a little bit more time to guess on that one. Oh, such beautiful creatures as they soar through the air around here. And Tom's going to share with us what that one is, but I want to give you just a second. Go ahead and get those answers in. Ooh, somebody has it already. A couple people have it already. Oh, Mrs. Mitchley, thank you for joining. Mrs. Mitchley said this snowy owl, and that is correct. Nice work. So, Tom, can you share a little bit of information about the snowy owl?
Well, I think it goes back to the earlier comment about how foxes follow polar bears as they go across the Arctic and kill and feed on seals. You have this whole, what we'd call an assemblage of animals that travel along, and the snowy owl is one of them. It flies as well with the foxes and with other animals like wolverines. We've seen them go to polar bear kills. So they too will feed off of these carcasses, but they also like to feed on animals, small mice-like creatures that live up here in the Arctic. Voles, V-O-L-E-S, that's an Arctic form of a mouse that has no tail. And then we also have some deer mice and those kinds of field mice that live up here. A new word for you is the word subnivean, which means beneath the snow. And those are subnivean creatures, but right now there's not a lot of snow. So we even had owls flying around us yesterday. And I think I forgot to add that is the owl that you all saw in Harry Potter that brings the mail. So you should know that. And you might even have a bonus point for his name, which was Hedwig?
Hedwig.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hedwig, all right. So this
Harry
is
Potter.
This is the home of Harry Potter's owl.
There you go.
All right.
I like these little facts. Look at that bear. He's doing it again, rolling around on his back. He's just kind of playing around out there and having a good time. Oh my, this is great to see. Well, we've got just a few more along our Polar Bear What Can You Hear quiz. So let's play this next animal and you go ahead and guess what it might be. We'll give you a hint. Now, this is tough. If you know how to spell this animal, it starts with a P, but it doesn't sound like it. I see lots of people answering. Let's see here. Got a few of them coming in. Ooh, couple people. Ooh, Barnard Academy. Nice work. It is a ptarmigan. I believe that's what you're sharing is ptarmigan. Yeah. So that's a ptarmigan. And you can, if you keep your eyes peeled, you can see ptarmigans around here as well. So, what can you share about a ptarmigan? I'm sorry, Jodi.
Well, as he said, they're around here, but we haven't been seeing too many. And if you saw in the picture, it's because they're white, and things are getting kind of snowy out here. But someone was just telling us yesterday that if you play that sound we just heard, then they'll think it's a real ptarmigan, and they'll all come up. So maybe we'll have to try that later. But also, as Kyle said, their spelling is really funny. So teachers, if you want to... For some of the older grades, if you want to look at that, it starts with a P, but sounds like it starts with a T. So their spelling is one of the most unique things about them, maybe.
Yeah, very unique. So thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, one more animal left on our quiz. You guys are doing great. Look at this bear. Tom, can you tell us before we get to this next one, what's going on? What might the bear be doing right now? For those, we're getting questions from the students watching.
Well, we can tell you what he's not doing, and that is eating. He's not got anything to eat, but it looks like he's chewing on something there. I think he's playing with his feet. It's kind of a... And what's interesting about this, about Churchill, is these animals have, very little to do. So because they're not foraging, they conserve energy, and that's back to what Kyle was saying, is they're very inactive because there's no sense to run around and just burn up fat that you don't have to spare. So he's just playing around, kind of like, like you might, if you're ever sitting in the doctor's office, you watch people fiddle around with their fingers and things. That's all he's doing.
Okay.
Idling his time.
He's entertaining us, that's for sure.
Yeah, he is. Fun to watch.
Well, I think that might be a little hint as to what our next animal is, because he is hanging around and he's waiting for something. And we're going to go ahead and play the sound that the pups of this next animal can make. All right, so it was short but really, really cute, of course. However, here for a reason and sustains or helps the ecosystem. So, what can you tell us before you give him the answer? Can you give him maybe a clue, Seth, as to where that animal lives and maybe something fun fact about it?
Sure, that animal is a very important part of a polar bear's diet, and they live out in the water, and as you saw from the picture, they are very, very cute little guys. So one of the really cool things about that animal in particular is, although we're up here in the subarctic and north of us is the Arctic, the water is very cold, that animal can actually get into water that's a little bit warmer too. So they're cold water and they can get into water that's a bit warmer.
Well, we have a lot of answers coming in. I'm so impressed. We've got some smart kiddos paying attention on this one. But go ahead and tell them what it is and confirm that many of them had it right.
That was a harp seal pup.
Yeah, a harp seal. So that's just one of the type of seals up here, though. There are more than one type of seal.
Right. And the primary seal that a polar bear is going to eat around here is actually a ring seal. If we move a little bit to the east to an area called Davis Strait, polar bears over there tend to eat more harp seals, but right around here they primarily eat ring seals.
Great. Well, thank you, guys. We hope you enjoyed that little quiz, because that was fun for us to come up with and to create as well. What we would like for you guys to do, if you have some time, maybe you could put together a book of your own, a little polar bear, what can you hear? Put together a little book of your own of maybe your favorite animal. And as a class, if you would put those together, that might be a fun way for you to learn more about the animals of the Arctic, and specifically the animals around Churchill. So we definitely challenge you to do that. We've got some more fun things to learn, and of course we want to bring this back to the polar bears, because of course that bear right out the window, so intriguing, so fascinating, and people of course have been trying to study but also live with these bears for a long time. So how this is going to work is we're going to play a little comparison game, and Jodi's going to help us out by starting, okay? And we would love for your participation in this comparison game, and it's going to be comparing humans to polar bears, more or less. So the question that I have for all of you students is, how far away do you think you could smell your mom if she was baking cookies? Or your dad? How far away do you think you could smell a family member as they were baking cookies? And as you're thinking of that and how far you think it might be, how far away do you think a polar bear could smell? And Jodi's going to help us out and share a little bit more information about that. Jodi, polar bear facts. How far can a polar bear smell?
So under really, really perfect conditions, really perfect, with no wind blowing around or anything, but a polar bear could smell up to 40 miles.
Wow. I don't think I could smell my mom's cookies 40. Well, they're pretty good.
If they're the extra special chocolate chip, maybe.
I'd like to think that I could, but probably not. Okay. Seth, another little polar bear fact, and we want the students to think about this. How long could you guys go without eating? Now, it's probably a little bit different for each of you, depending on what you like to eat, but how long could you go without eating? Seth, what's your answer to that first?
Well, I get a little bit grumpy, I will have to say, if I miss lunch or miss dinner. So I can't go very long without getting too grumpy. A few hours, and then I like to have a snack.
Okay, and so a polar bear.
A polar bear, on the other hand, in this type of environment where we are in Hudson Bay, as I mentioned, for part of the year they spend their time on land, and when they're on land they really don't hunt too well. They need that sea ice to be able to go out and hunt animals like ring seals. But this ice tends to break up around June or July, and it only reforms again in November or December. So they can go 4 or 5 months without eating. And even cooler, if you're a female, if you're a pregnant mom and you're going to have cubs over the winter, that means you can go even longer. So you might hop off the ice in June or July, and you'll have your cubs around December, and then you won't return to the ice until around March. So that means you could go 7 or 8 months without really having anything to eat. That's pretty impressive. I know that far surpasses what I could do.
Wow. No, definitely could not. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so Tom, question for you, and we want the students, of course, to think about this as well.
Sure.
How big do you get when you're a parent? Well, you are a parent, so you might know the answer to this already. But I wonder what the students think. How big are their parents?
The polar bears?
Well, I'm wondering if the students have an idea, and they're probably guessing. I see some of them answering in the in the chat window. By the way, I forgot to tell you, Mrs. Paul's grade 2 class, they thought they couldn't go until lunchtime, but maybe they could for the eating question. I like that one.
I think I'm with her class.
Yeah.
I agree with her class.
Definitely. So how far for the students who are thinking in their minds how big their parents could get? How big can a polar bear get, though? A polar bear parent.
Yeah, I was trying to look at it in the exchange rate of students. I think a big polar bear would be about 20 kindergartners, maybe about 17 first graders, and unfortunately about 5 of me, and that's really scary. that means that's bad. It should be like 8 of me. So there's a little too much of me. But that's kind of the exchange. So we're talking over 1,000 pounds, which is a pretty big animal weight-wise. Now, I've measured polar bear before standing flat-footed. Its head is at 11'6".
Wow. So
if the teachers have a ceiling there, they could take a ruler and lay it along the wall and see if you can get up 11.5 feet. That's a pretty big animal.
So does that mean a polar bear could slam dunk a basketball?
It could eat the rim, the ball, and then what's left, it could sit. Now, yeah, it can. You still have to look down and through the hole and drop it. Yeah.
What's
So-
fascinating is
Yeah,
we had some bears walking around this morning, and they were demonstrating that a little bit, kind of putting their paws up on the side of the tundra buggies, trying
They're
to
big.
sniff. Yeah, they're pretty big animals for sure.
You know, funny side note I'll add though is when they dig a den, these mothers maybe weigh 400 pounds to 500 pounds. And even humans, BJ's here, he's doing our media, but he and I have both gone into dens where it's very difficult to get in there. So as tall and long as they are, they can get really kind of like skinny and go through small holes, the mothers. Of course, this is in the spring when they're not fat, but that surprised us because they're heavy, they're big, but they can kind of slink around. And if you look at their bodies, they're fairly long bodies on them. So, and I think that has a lot to do with the ability to lunge and catch seals.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, thank you for sharing. And we have so many great questions coming in. We're going to get to some questions at the end, but we have to take a few now as well because we've got questions coming all over the place. Emailing them, questions@pbears.org, in that chat window, and also using the hashtag Tundra Connections on Twitter. And so there was a question from Lana, and Lana's in Hoover, Alabama. And Lana wanted to know, what will happen to the bears when the weather changes? Seth, do you think you could answer that? What will happen when the weather changes?
Sure. That's a great question, and that's a really important question to be thinking about right now. As the climate changes, polar bears, again, they need that sea ice to be able to go out and hunt seals. And the seals are their favorite food items, and without seals, they're going to have a tough go of it. It's going to be tough for them to make a living. So it's really important that we start thinking about ways that you guys back in your classrooms can start making some changes so that we have less of an impact on the environment.
Great, thank you for that. Please continue to submit those questions. We're going to definitely get to some more of those in a few minutes. But back to our little comparisons. How far away can we see? Do you guys know this answer? Jodi, do you know it? How far away can a human see?
I know it. So if I look outside the window right now, and I look out over the water, which is perfectly flat, I can see about 3 miles.
3 miles, okay. So the question then is, if I'm a polar bear, how far can I see?
If I'm a polar bear, I can actually see about the same distance.
Now, can polar bears see just like humans? Do they see the same colors and everything?
No, they don't actually. They're kind of like dogs. If you have a dog, maybe you know this, if your pet is a puppy. Polar bears are also colorblind, so they can't see everything the same that we see.
Great, thank you for that. Continuing down the line here, Seth.
You're right.
How thick is your winter coat?
Well,
It's
it's
pretty thick there.
Yeah, as you guys were taking a look out the window, it's pretty chilly outside, and we need these thick winter coats to stay warm.
They're nice.
They are very nice. And you can see that polar bear, he's taking a little snooze there right now, but he has a built-in coat. And in addition to that coat, he has a layer of fat that's called blubber that is several inches thick. This is what a polar bear skin is going to look like. And beneath that skin, he's going to have fat that's several inches thick, and those two things together help to keep him nice and warm when the weather is quite chilly outside.
Yeah. I like this. This is
Yeah?
nice to have that example, yeah. Ooh, I'm glad I had this coat. I don't have thick skin, that's for sure. How about another one? Tom, how well can you swim?
Well, you know, there are some humans that can swim long distances, 20 miles, 30 miles, and even more. You've seen people try to do the Florida to Cuba thing, and so I don't know what the distance is there, but it's a long ways. But a polar bear could go much, much further simply because they're a marine mammal, which means they truly do live in the ocean. They can swim long distances. Interestingly, they don't use their rear feet. They just kind of drag behind. But their front feet, like this one here, they're like big paddles, and they can kind of dog paddle through the water and are able to make their mileage that way. So a great concern, however, is these new open aspects of the ocean, not so much ice. Bears now are having to cross increasingly greater distances, and that's really maybe not such a problem for the adults, although it's for the young. The young are incapable of doing that. So they can swim long distances,
Okay, thank you.
maybe hundreds of miles.
Jodi, do you eat with your hands or with the knife and a fork?
Sometimes I eat with my hands, but usually I eat with
Usually
a knife and
probably
a fork.
not. Yeah.
If my mom's not looking.
I don't
maybe
think polar bears are using knives and forks though. What are some of the tools that they use to eat?
Yeah, so polar bears don't have knives and forks, and they don't need them because they've got really, really sharp claws. If you guys can see these. So these are pretty long and scary. I don't know. I keep my fingernails pretty short, but these are getting pretty long. And they use these to help to get their food ripped open and to they use their paws to help move it around. Yeah, no cutlery for those guys.
All right. Just a few of these left. Seth, how far can you hear something?
Well, I don't have the best hearing in the world, but I think I have pretty reasonable hearing. So I can hear, depending on how loud the noise is, something that's, maybe a quarter mile or a half mile away. Polar bears, on the other hand, have pretty good hearing, and I think one of the coolest things about polar bears is that they have fur on the insides of their ears to help keep them nice and warm. So that's another way that they're adapted to this harsh environment out here, so that they can deal with the really cold temperatures in the winter.
Okay. So we've got a lot of questions, and I think these questions will probably help us in our last few. One of the questions that we're getting is, again, what about the seal? I'm sorry, not the seals. What about the food? What do polar bears eat, and do they eat anything other than seals? So I'm thinking or wondering, could we maybe even have a demonstration? I see this polar bear skull. How would a polar bear go about eating to start with?
Let me demonstrate on my colleague over here.
Oh, perfect. I'm going to pretend that I'm the seal.
Let's see your best seal impression.
But you can see that's a pretty big head, right? I mean, that's a big skull.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so do polar bears eat anything other than seals?
They can, but seals really comprise the vast majority of their diet. So in some places, we talked a lot about ring seals. In some areas, you might have bears that might catch a bigger type of seal called a bearded seal. In other areas, they might catch harp seals. In some places, the really big polar bears might catch a walrus or a beluga. But in general, the vast majority of their diet is comprised of ring seals.
Great. Well, we're going to get to questions. We have so many coming in. Thank you. And seeing some new names, welcome to the program. So glad that you're with us. Robin Dyson is wondering, and her students are wondering, how deep can a polar bear dive? Does anybody know that answer?
That's a great question.
That's a
Studied?
good question.
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that one.
I don't think anybody's. We actually have sensors that you can put on radio tags for determining how deep walruses dive and how long they're down and all that. But because diving for polar bears isn't really part of their life profile, they don't dive to catch food. They certainly can't catch seals in the water, so they wouldn't go just a foot or two below the surface. They don't just go down for a look-see, that sort of thing. So scientists could figure it out, but I suspect it's all just right at the surface. There's no reason to be doing that.
Okay. Mrs. Paul's grade 2 students, they were wondering, do we have any idea whether the bear we were watching was a male or a female, and how would we want to take a guess at that?
Well, it was playing with its nails, so we assume it's a female.
Hey.
Yeah, men don't do that.
No, that's a really great question, and unless it's a bear that has cubs with it, that has babies, and in that case we know that it's a female, it's really difficult to tell if these bears out here are males or females. So this guy, he or she looks like she's resting again, doing some rolling around, and then needs to rest after all that exertion. We're not sure if that's a male or a female.
Great, thank you very much. Some other great questions in here. How many teeth do a polar bear have?
We could open them up and count them.
Steve will know.
I think they have right around 42 teeth. And you can see right here that they have these gigantic teeth here. These are called the canines, and they use those to grasp onto their prey items, the seals, as they're trying to bring them out of the holes. The holes in the ice.
I can't believe I missed that. That's terrible.
That's okay. Other great questions
Just
coming
ruined my
in.
day.
It's not called Stump the Scientist, so we do apologize.
But I will add one thing. Look at that skull. Can you show them that again? The big gap, which is very noticeable between the front teeth and the back teeth.
Right here?
Right in
Yes,
here.
you'll see that in a lot of carnivores, and that's so that they presumably can sink the fangs deeply into the flesh of the animal that they bit. rather than have teeth rows right up to the fang, which would stop that.
Well, I think we've got one that you can answer for us, Tom. How many seals can a polar bear eat in a day?
Well, I think, I was all ready for this one because it's in a year, but no, not a year. It had to be a day.
No, a year is okay.
Oh,
Sure,
I'll go with that. So somewhere around one a week would be a rough value. So maybe 45 to 50, but per day, now you've done it. I think what happens is they probably feast on one and kind of go rest and sleep it off a little bit since they've got a full gut. So let's go with one.
Okay.
I'm going to stick with that.
I like it. So, Mrs. Page's grade 2 class wants, Neva specifically wants to know, how will polar bears survive without their habitat?
Will polar bears survive?
Without their habitat.
Well, I think, unfortunately, it's really hard to survive without your habitat. I know if you took away my house or locked the door and didn't let me back in, I wouldn't do very well. I live in Canada, and it gets really cold and icy. And if you took away my kitchen and I couldn't cook my food, I would have a really hard time surviving. And so the polar bears, I think, have the same problem. If you take away their kitchen, which is the ice, which is where they don't cook their food, but they have to catch their food. If you take that away from them, they're going to have a pretty tough time.
I think that's partly why we're here, right? Is because we're trying to share that there's still time. There's lots that we can do, right? We can help to reduce our greenhouse gases, right? We can turn off the lights when we leave the room, turn off the PlayStation and the TV. There's lots of things that we can still do.
Sure.
So a few more questions here, and I like this one. SMES 3rd grade, Jaylee wants to know, how many cubs could a polar bear have during their lifetime?
That's a great question. So, typically, an adult female polar bear, she'll become old enough to have cubs when she's about 6 years old, and she can continue having cubs for about 10 or 12 years, and that she's able to have those cubs about every 3 years. Okay, so if we do a little bit of math, polar bears generally have twins. They can have cubs every 3 years, and let's say she can produce 4 or 5 litters of cubs. That means that she could have somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 12 cubs over the course of her lifetime. And some polar bears will have less than that, some polar bears will have more than that. But I think that's a good estimate.
Okay, thank you very much. Ooh, interesting questions here. You guys are filled with great questions, and I love that because I think that's really what scientists do, right? You're asking good questions and trying to find ways to be able to study these bears. So I don't know if we'll have an answer, but another great question coming in. How do polar bears communicate with each other? And do we know if they do?
I can add a little bit on that. I think the thing that is most exciting for me as studying animals is to realize that they don't sense the world like we do at all. And in the case of polar bears, their primary sense would be their scent capabilities. So I'm really grateful right now. I can't tell what Kyle smells like. I really don't want to know what these individual scents are for these people, but they do know that. And there's been some great work done looking at how they can locate each other in an otherwise featureless environment. So they lay scent down with their feet, and they also urinate, which has scent in that, and it gets on their legs and then down on their feet. Theoretically, bears have kind of a whole envelope of scent around them, and the wind whisks that off, and it is able to communicate who's where across the landscape. So primarily by scent. They don't locate each other by getting up on a big rock and looking around. They use their nose.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, only time for a few more questions here. We're so glad that you're participating. Can we talk to a little bit, Anna from Alabama wants to know a little bit, she's heard about global warming, but she's not quite sure what it is, or climate change. Could we talk to that a little bit? Anybody comfortable with that?
No, you can do it.
Me? Okay. So climate change means that our environment, our weather patterns, our long-term weather patterns are continuously changing. And there's a number of different things that can cause that. Things like volcanoes and the way the ocean circulation patterns warm. You might have heard of something called El Nino, or the inverse of that is called La Nina. So there are a lot of different processes that are involved in regulating our climate or keeping our climate stable. Now, people also play a role in that as well. And things like our greenhouse gas emissions contribute to that, and that's what we think is causing an increase in the temperature of our climate over the long term.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. So what I'd like to do as we wrap up here, we are so glad that you guys have been able to hang out with us. You can see the polar bear enjoyed our show, but perhaps we put him to sleep. I hope we didn't put you to sleep, but he's relaxing out there. And what I'd like to do is just have each of our panelists, Jodi, if we can start with you and we'll work our way down, just share maybe just one last word. What gets you excited to be here, and what might you encourage the students to do to if they want to be up here at some point in their life?
That's great. Thank you, Kyle. So I'm actually trained not as a biologist, but as a mathematician. So I do math all day, every day. You guys do it for maybe half an hour, but that's my job. And I never thought that I would get to be up here looking at bears and studying bears and hanging out with these guys. So I think just find something that you love to do. So I love to do math, but maybe you love to do, I don't know, music or writing, and then just do your best at it, and then it'll take you somewhere that you never dreamed that you would go.
Thank you very much.
And for me, my story is a little bit different from Jodi's, but I think my message is going to be very similar. I've known that I wanted to work on wildlife since I was a really little guy, maybe 3 or 4 years old. So for me to be able to be here to study polar bears and having had that opportunity for the past several years is really fantastic. And what got me here was knowing what I wanted to do with my life and what I wanted to do in the long term. And I've really kept my nose down and worked hard and stayed focused on those goals. And that's allowed me to get to where I am today. So I would also encourage you guys, find something that you're passionate about as you continue your studies, and whether that's being an educator or being a scientist or doing something completely different, and really work to meet those goals, and you too can make it happen.
Great. Thank you very much. Tom.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have a few thoughts here. Like everyone else here, we had different paths that brought us to Churchill, but what joins us all together here is a love for the wild places and things on the planet. I think most all people I've met would consider life a lot less intriguing and engaging and wonderful if these wild things were not here. And I think that because polar bears so remind us of animals that we're very close to, like the dogs that we were raised with, most all of us had pet dogs. They look like really big dogs with little tiny tails. And they remind me of a golden retriever or a Labrador retriever we used to have. There's sort of an affinity anyway with these animals. You look at them, they have a joy for life, it seems. They live wild and free here, and we don't want to see that go away. And I think that one of the messages that Polar Bear International and certainly the sponsors Frontier North has is that we can do things, and we need to do things to make sure that all of us, our children and our children's children, have the opportunity to enjoy this wonderful resource. One of the things I like to do at home is we like to raise a garden, and we don't do it. Our neighbors say, boy, that's a lot of work. You can just go to the store. But it's not about saving money. It's about being close to the earth, and it's about the joy of being independent and knowing that you can do something yourself. And I think that as we turn off light switches, as we encourage our family to not idle the car when we don't need to, when we make efforts to recycle, yes, it is important on a small scale. I mean, for the individual to return in a can or turn lights off. But I think the bigger thing is you're feeling that you are part of a movement to make a difference. And your generation is going to do this. We're convinced that you're going to pick this torch up and you're going to make a big difference, because it won't be acceptable in your lifetime to waste things and to have beautiful animals like polar bears disappear. So I'm very excited for you, and I'm grateful that we can all share this beautiful place with you today, and hopefully you felt a little bit of the thrill it is to be here in this spectacular part of the world.
Great. Thank you so much. And we're really, really thankful for so many people that allow this to happen. And we want to encourage you. There's so many ways that you can continue to join us to make a difference. And we're really excited about just these events and what we're doing. So we hope that you can join us. We still have more webcasts to go. In fact, we'll be talking about polar bears by the numbers, bringing math even more into the fold when we talk about polar bears tomorrow. We're also really excited that we're going to be rebroadcasting our virtual field trip. And that happened just yesterday, where we took students from all across North America on a trip to see what is it like to go to Churchill, Manitoba, and what is the town of Churchill like? How do we drive on the buggy? How do we interact? And so we're going to, back by popular demand, we're going to rebroadcast that one again tomorrow, Thursday at 1:30, and we're very excited to be sharing that. We'll be having some more information on the Polar Bears International website, specifically if you look at the Tundra Connections page. We do want to remind you that, of course, Polar Bears International wants to keep bears here in the Arctic forever. And so there's still time. There's still lots of time. And so what we want you to do is continue to do things like you're doing, to turn off those light switches, to ride your bike to school now and then, to do things like Tom is talking about, even planting gardens, ways that you can go ahead and reduce those greenhouse gases. But you can also join us next week as we celebrate Polar Bear Week, November 2nd to the 8th. And of course, we'll be showing off more bears, just like this cute, cuddly guy outside. But you can also sign our petition for polar bears, and that was linked in the chat window there, and that asks our world leaders to take action. And so please go ahead, take these next steps, because it really does make a difference. There are so many things that, when done by a lot of people, can make big change. So thank you to you, thank you to all your family members. Encourage your family members to do the same. And, well, join us again. We really hope that you do. Go ahead and take a look at the post-broadcast survey on the Tundra Connections website. We'd love to hear from you, to hear your feedback. And really, we're glad that you're able to interact and ask those questions. So, there are a number of people that we need to thank for this event. We've had fun. I've had fun. Have you guys had fun?
Absolutely.
Have you had fun, Tom?
It's been a ball.
Sorry to stump you too much.
Yeah, I'm so upset about this. Ethan, I'll tell you what, I'm going to count those things.
You're going to count the teeth when they finish.
It's never. I've been sold a bill.
We've had a lot of fun. We hope that you will take that challenge. Maybe make your own little polar bear book. We'd love to see that. You can share that with us. But of course, our heartfelt thanks goes out to Julene Reed, who is the PBI Tundra Connections program director, and she is a member of the PBI's Education Advisory Council and helps to put this whole program together. And of course, there are so many other people. These great Tundra buggies, you see we're sitting on this now. We're safe, we're warm, we're cozy. Brought to you by our platinum sponsor, Frontiers North Tundra Buggy Adventure. We'd like to thank Telestream, the makers of Wirecast, Explore.org, which is a direct charitable activity of the Annenberg Foundation, Parks Canada, Google Street View, the Center for Global Education, Taking It Global, and Canada Goose. And most of all, from the Discovery Educator Network, guys, thanks for having me. Polar Bears International, thank you for letting me come and have fun, learn with these guys. We've had a blast. We hope that you have a great afternoon.
Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care.